Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision making for individuals and teams who work in high stress, high consequence environments. Our mission is simple: to help you see the bad things coming and time to prevent bad outcomes. On this episode, we'll talk about positive and negative clues and cues that form situational awareness. We'll share a near-miss event where a first responder was nearly run over by one of his own fire department command vehicles. And we'll share a dilemma where a listener talks about his concern with his department's training officers' lack of interest in conducting mayday and rapid intervention training because, as the listener writes, he thinks it will never happen here. As we train our employees to improve situational awareness, it's important that the lessons include a list of both the positive and negative clues and cues a worker must understand in order to develop and maintain strong situational awareness. In the context of developing situational awareness, positive and negative does not mean good and bad. Rather, positive and negative mean present and absent. Let me explain. Not all clues are created equal. In the process of developing situational awareness, it all starts with perception. Or if you're a fan of Boyd's OODA loop, observation. Name calling aside, it all begins with capturing information, clues and cues in your environment, and then processing those clues and cues into meaning something. The problem is, some of the clues and cues, they aren't there. Really. They're absent. You can't see them. You can't hear them. It's not because you're not looking or you're not listening. They're simply not there. But nonetheless, they may be as important as any clue or cue you can see or hear. Thus, situational awareness is formed based on what you see and hear, and on what you don't see and you don't hear. Positive clues and cues. The positive clues and cues are the easiest to detect because they can be seen and heard. Understanding them, on the other hand, is a completely separate matter, and one I will speak about in a future podcast. Notwithstanding the challenges with comprehension, it's relatively easy to train an employee on what to look and listen for in the work setting. For the firefighters who may be listening to this podcast, some of the positive clues and cues might be smoke, flame, construction, and how the construction is decomposing, victims that are present, wind and weather conditions. For the medical personnel, for a sick person, some positive clues and cues might be the respirations, lung sounds, pulse, blood pressure, skin color and temperature, pupil size and reaction. These are all clues and cues that can be either seen or heard. Negative clues and cues. Negative clues and cues are much harder to detect and may also be more difficult to comprehend their meaning, especially the first time they're encountered. Because negative clues and cues are not actually there. They can't be seen or heard. Therefore, they can slip by the responders rather easily. One of the examples I like to share in my mental management of emergencies program is to ask a young person in the room if sick kids cry. They always respond in the affirmative. Then I ask them if really sick kids cry harder. Again, they respond in the affirmative. And then I find a seasoned medical provider in the room, and I ask them if really sick kids cry. They always answer, no. Why? Because really sick kids, the one on death's doorstep, they don't cry. This is a negative clue that means a lot to a medical care team. If a responder did not know better, they might be lulled into thinking that a kid who's quiet is not as sick is a kid who's crying. Novices versus experts. When it comes to identifying positive clues and cues, novices and experts are about evenly matched. Again, notwithstanding there may be huge differences in the understanding of what those clues and cues mean, both are able to see and hear relatively the same things. However, when it comes to negative clues and cues, the expert's performance towers over the novices. To be able to see and hear clues and cues that are absent requires a deep understanding of what clues and cues should be present, yet are not. This requires expert knowledge. An expert can look at a situation and draw completely different conclusions about what is happening and how bad the situation is simply by combining the positive and negative clues and cues. What's even more amazing is the expert may be doing so subconsciously. That's right, the expert may be unaware that they are actually comparing the situation with what they have stored in their subconscious brain as typical situations and identifying absent clues and cues that prime their recognition and help them make better decisions. Novice employees and supervisors should be assigned a mentor and spend time shadowing the expert during critical incidents and work processes that require decisions. The mentor can ask the novice to identify the clues and cues and draw a conclusion. The expert can then either affirm the conclusion or refute it with additional negative clues and cues that the novice was unaware of. This also can be done in training scenarios and simulations using videos. When experts draw different conclusions than the novice, the simple act of the novice asking how the expert drew their conclusion might leave the expert without a good answer. This is because the expert may be doing the processing of negative clues and cues subconsciously. It may be hard for the expert to bring to words how they even knew what they knew. This tacit knowledge, or unconscious knowledge, is truly what separates experts from novices. An expert committed to sharing their knowledge will display patience and allow the novice to ask questions about how those decisions were made. Experts don't think of this as defiance. They think of this as learning. Here are some ideas for developing an understanding of positive and negative clues with your coworkers. Identify and discuss some specific positive and negative clues and cues for various work environments an employee may encounter. Discuss some strategies for teaching employees and supervisors on how to identify both positive and negative clues and cues. Following the completion of a task, discuss the positive and negative clues and cues that were captured and evaluated that helped the employees form and maintain situational awareness. And now for a situational awareness near-miss lesson learned. This lesson comes to us from the Firefighter near-miss reporting system, where lessons learned become lessons applied. Command vehicle nearly backs over firefighter rolling hose. This is the reporter's account. At about 17:30 hours, companies were dispatched for an unknown fire. A resident could see flames. During the process of leaving the scene, the battalion chief backed his vehicle and almost hit a lieutenant who was rolling fire hose lengths behind the chief's vehicle on the roadway. The battalion chief, involved in the near miss, had responded to the fire call and arrived as the second due battalion chief. The first due battalion chief had responded and established command for a field fire behind a building. I observed the crew and the lieutenant picking up hose. The weather was very cold, and I only had on my station uniform and a highway safety vest. I went back to the command vehicle and cleared with him to leave the scene. Upon returning to my vehicle, I walked wide and observed the rear of the vehicle, removed and folded my vest, and I dropped it on the ground and tried to place it back in the driver's door pocket. I had to pick it up, refold it, and put it back in the door properly. When I got back in the car, I remembered it was cold and I realized I had left the passenger side window open. I put up the front driver's side window and adjusted the heater on high and sat there to let it warm up. And then I looked behind and through the mirrors and started backing. As soon as I backed up, I heard someone yell. I looked and saw someone in my rearview mirror. Then I realized that I had also opened my passenger side window, and that's what allowed me to hear someone yell. I got out of the car and made face-to-face communications with the lieutenant. He said, "It's okay, Chief. You almost got me, but I'm okay." I said, "What are you doing?" I saw he was rolling hose, and he did not have a direct answer. I also observed that he had an 1 3/4 roll of hose partially in his hand. He then moved the hose to the side of the road, and I left the scene. As I re-entered my vehicle, I realized the rear window was down, and I put my rear passenger window up and left the scene. A few days later, the battalion chief who served as the incident commander called me and asked me if I was aware if I had hit the lieutenant, and I said I was aware of the incident, but I did not think that I had hit him. I also said it disturbed me because I'm the everyone goes home advocate, and I was concerned because of my passion for firefighter safety. I said, how would it look if the everyone goes home guy ran over someone? He said he wanted to make sure that I reviewed the incident with the lieutenant, as there had been other backing incidents that had happened recently. I assured him that I would. The next shift I met with the lieutenant, and he and I discussed the incident and each other's parts in the event. I apologized for almost backing into him, since it could have caused death or injury. We discussed what went wrong. I explained the event from my point of view. I reviewed what I did in accordance with our policy and explained to him about the delay that had caused me to take a longer time, resulting in me not seeing him move into that area between the time I got in my car and the time that I was ready to leave. I cited the weather as being cold, the open window, and turning on my heater. The lieutenant could not explain why he was rolling the hose in the street and not on the paved driveway. We discussed what we could do to prevent it again. We discussed items such as being more aware of your surroundings for both the driver and the firefighter in traffic, using and soliciting a secondary party to assist the driver of single-occupant vehicles, like the chief's vehicles, inspectors and vehicles, etc. The lieutenant suggested the use of backup alarms on staff vehicles, like the apparatus have, that would have alerted him to the noise. We also discussed the practice of after-action reviews. The lieutenant is a Marine Reserve, and I asked and he explained how they use after-action reports in an event in the Marine Corps. I discussed the use of after-action reports at my own work with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Lessons learned. Here are the lessons learned as the reporter presents them. Members should follow all SOPs for backing procedures and work in teams, having company officers supervising the work of firefighters and acting as safety officers. Drivers should use backers, making special a request when staff vehicles are being backed, such as chief's cars and vehicles with persons who don't have a second person to back them up. Drivers, most importantly chief officers, must maintain situational awareness about how exposure to extreme environmental temperatures can lead to extra time needed between tasks. Staff vehicles should be fitted with backup alarms. You can learn more about this near-miss and other near-miss events by visiting the Firefighter nearmiss.com website. And if you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to be interviewed on this show, please visit my companion site, closecallsurvivor.com, and click on the Contact Us link. Thank you in advance for sharing your lessons learned so that others may live. If you're interested in attending a live event, you can check out the Situational Awareness Matters Tour Stop schedule at samatters.com. Click on the Program and Keynotes tab just below the header. Then click on the Events Schedule tab. If I'm in your area, I hope you'll consider attending a live event. If you're not able to attend a live event, consider signing up for the SA Matters Online Academy. The Academy contains videos and articles that cover the same content as a 3-day live tour event, delivered in 14 modules that you can go through at your own pace from your own computer. The Academy Plus version includes 4 books that are referenced throughout the Academy. The Plus version is a great bargain because the tuition simply covers the cost of the books, making the Academy free. Just click on the link below the header on the SA Matters homepage titled Online Academy. And now we'll take a question from an SA Matters community member. This question came to me by way of email. Our department training officer doesn't think we need to train on rapid intervention and mayday because he thinks it'll never happen here. Can you make any suggestions about how we can get him to understand that anyone, anywhere, at any time can have a mayday and need rapid intervention? Thanks for writing in and sharing the question. It is one thing to have a member in denial of the potential of your department having a mayday or needing a rapid intervention. It takes my concern to a whole new level when it's your department's training officer. I don't know your training officer, so my advice here is going to be unqualified, but I'm going to go on a limb and say your training officer is either complacent or afraid of something. He may be complacent because your department has never had a mayday or never had a near miss that even closely resembles a casualty event. Rest assured, unless your department is somehow devoid of all risk associated with performing the skills of a public safety provider, you are at risk. There are many ways to reduce risk and to some degree manage risk, but there is no way to completely avoid risk. Living in the denial of the potential of a mayday is actually adding risk, which is not where you want to be. I would recommend first talking to the training officer one-on-one in a non-threatening manner. Try to appeal to his sense of logic. It may be helpful to look at other near-miss or casualty events that have occurred in similar communities, one that is maybe of same size or design as your community. I'm sure they're out there, and I'm sure those departments never thought they'd have a casualty event either. Ask the training officer to allow line personnel to train on the skills that would help prevent the reoccurrence of a casualty in your own community. If the one-on-one approach doesn't work, consider finding a member who has a good relationship with the training officer and who is an advocate for your cause. Ask him or her to approach the training officer and make an appeal on your behalf. Finally, if neither of those work, consider gathering the support of a group of firefighters to advance your cause. There's strength in numbers. Avoid being confrontational, however. You'll catch more bees with honey than you will with vinegar. That's it. Episode 3 is complete. Thank you for sharing your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of my mission. If you like the show, please go to iTunes and search for SA Matters Radio and subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback and a 5-star review. This will help others find the show. You can also sign up for a free SA Matters monthly newsletter by visiting SAMatters.com and clicking the red box on the right side of the homepage. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.